Hello and welcome to the Spiritual Sisters podcast. My name is Gabrielle Celeste.
And I'm Nichole Christine.
Hey, how are you, sister? You look so
Hi.
pretty today.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
so
I don't know. I washed my
welcome.
hair today, maybe.
Oh,
That's why.
I think,
And then the
but you're,
headphones are covering all the grays.
but it's like the lip gloss is popping. The lip gloss is cool. Remember that song?
Jeffree Star. I got it for $5.
Oh, really? Was it
He was
like
having, no, I don't
a
know. He
sale?
was just having a good sale. I really
Oh,
like all his lip products.
I think I just one butchered those lyrics, and two, I've never tried any of his products. He's a
Oh,
little
his
bit of a
lip.
queen. He's a little. I mean, I love my queens. Don't get me wrong, but like, I think
He's a
he's
bit
like he takes.
much,
He's a bit much. Yeah.
but he
But
makes a good lip product.
but Jeffree, in a couple of years, if we end up working together, I never said that, and don't come for me.
You're going to be canceled before you even become anything.
Shit.
He's going to cancel you.
Shit. Oh my god, yeah. Okay, anyways. All right. So,
Yeah.
sister, what's going on? What's your
Anyway.
check-in?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of how much I want to share.
I get it. Okay,
Mm.
well, while you're thinking, can I just
No,
say to the audience?
yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
never mind.
No.
Okay, well,
Say it.
okay.
Say it.
This is our I think we're on mic number 4. And
Yeah.
this is the second time we're recording this episode, but I'm actually kind of happy about it because the first time I
It was a
literally
fucking
felt
mess.
I was high. I felt high. And I think this episode's going to be a lot better and more useful
And I
to the people
think
that are listening.
Mercury was in reggaeton.
It's still in reggaeton until the end of the week and it's kicking my ass.
Such a white girl. Reggaeton.
But you're
Yeah,
not
Mercury
white.
was fucking with us that day really bad, I remember. And I had to run to pick up my child and it was a mess.
But you know what? But for as much as we've recorded in this period of time during retrograde, it's gone fairly well. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed, knock on wood, all the things.
Yeah. Okay, so back to my check-in. So, I wasn't sure how much I wanted to share, but I think one of the things that I really strive to do in life and to be in life is like relatable and talking about things that maybe people don't talk about because for whatever reason. And so I just had surgery last week. So about, yeah, a week ago exactly. Recovered well, but it was surgery for some infertility issues. And I feel like, especially with infertility, it's something that people don't really talk about a lot because um, coming, from, well, I'm a woman, obviously. So coming from that angle, right? There's just so much shame, I think, around your body's not working or not doing what it's meant to do, and I definitely did have that. I definitely did have those feelings of like, why isn't this happening? So luckily for us, we have a doctor that jumped on things very quickly because of our advanced ages.
Oh my
uh,
goodness. Jeez, what a way to
uh,
put it.
because it used to be called geriatric pregnancy, but now they rebranded to advanced maternal age. But so because of my advanced maternal age, he jumped on the infertility testing and all that. So we had a procedure last week. I had a procedure last week and I've recovered pretty nicely, so that's good. So
Mhm.
that's kind of what's been going on here. It's been just a lot of downtime, which is always nice. I always welcome the downtime. And one of the things, so I listen back to all of the shows because I edit them. And Gabby, we say some dumb shit. Like we say words, mostly me. There was like I caught you maybe once or twice. You're much more well spoken than I am. But man, I said some dumb shit, and I'm actually surprised you didn't call me out on one of them. And the episode won't be out until after this one. But I called somebody an astrologist, and I know it's not an astrologist. I know it's an astrologer. And I was thinking, why didn't she correct me? So anyway, that's been my observation with editing is just like, what the fuck? Like, why did I say that? Like, I guess I don't word very well. So
I
that's
don't
kind
think
of
that's
been
true.
that's been interesting to listen back to.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Well, I don't think that's true, and I actually think we speak well, but okay.
No, you speak very well. I struggle with my words, and yeah, I've just decided that I'm not a wordsmith. I don't I don't word well, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Um,
well, thank you for saying that. That's actually really nice, but I was wondering if you wanted to share about your the visual experiences.
my visual experiences. Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
We
The
gotta
people
jump
need to
into this episode.
know.
Okay.
We
Well,
will.
then
We'll
you're
get
gonna
into the
have
episode.
to. Yeah, you're gonna have to go quick. Then I'm gonna take up all the time. Yeah. So we got home from our honeymoon a while ago, and the night we got back, I we were sleeping in separate rooms because I had to work early the next day, and I didn't want to wake him up, so we slept in separate rooms. And I got up in the middle of the night to use a restroom like I usually do, and I
Mhm.
saw like a man in my living room, and I thought it was my husband. So I said, "Babe," and nothing. And I looked again, and then the man wasn't there, which the way the living room set up, it would have made sense that maybe he had gone around to the couch. So I went into the room that he was sleeping, and he was sleeping in the room. So yeah,
Casual.
casual. I
Yeah,
was like,
I think it's
again?
think it's gonna the floodgates are about to be open.
Yeah. But anyways,
Yeah.
enough about me. What's up with you before we jump in?
Actually, I feel like I'm besides like, being really heavy in the work, I think by this point it'll be okay to share. I'm launching a blog. So I'm really working on that, guys. And if you follow my stories, because I post usually like 2 weeks in advance on my personal page, it really like shows the back end of everything I'm working on. That's definitely keeping me busy. However, other than that, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm feeling myself. I'm like, summer's about to start. Like,
Oh.
I know. I'm like, I give less of a fuck. And I hope that this season stays. And I know at some point, like, my Cancerian ways will want to like crawl in and like protect me and I'll go back into my shell because that's how I'm built. But I'm like, nah, fuck it. Like, I just feel like it's like a little mini coming out and I can't wait. And I think there's a reason behind it, but I don't want to speak to that until like probably August, September, just because there's a little bit of a prediction going on. And I think people will have a better insight as to what that actually is come end of June with our episodes there and around our birthdays.
Mm. Speaking of episodes,
Mhm.
I don't even know that people care, but just I feel the need to explain it. So we have this is actually the first time we've recorded just you and me in a while because
I know.
we've been we've been recording a lot of guest episodes, and those are going to be staggered as far as when they come out. But we've recorded like 3 guest episodes recently, and then
Mhm.
the episode that we put out the week before this one's going to be coming out. Oh my gosh, we recorded that a while ago. So it'll be funny because it would it'll be like a couple of shitty microphone quality audio with a couple decent with the shitty thrown back in there and then back to the good ones. But yeah, we've been kind of all over the place, and I think, our goal was when we decided that we were going to move this to weekly, that we wanted to really just batch and get a lot done. So
Mhm.
we've been really on top of it. I think we have maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes that we've pre-recorded, so that's been kinda nice. But I'm hoping that maybe by July, we'll be more into real time as far as the way we release. So that'll be
Yeah.
nice.
But I'm actually really proud of ourselves because if you think about like our schedules the last 2 weeks and how much we've actually recorded and done, like, I mean, that's pretty impressive from that end,
Yeah.
considering like we still work 9 to 5s, we do all the things on the side. And I know I say all the things quite often, but it's like, guys, I can't list out everything I'm doing right now because it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just hard to keep up with. But, anyways, that's a quick summation of what's been going on in our world. But I'm looking forward to doing this again. And I think this is why this episode's going to be better than the first one we have recorded because we
It
do
was a
harmonize
fucking
well.
mess. It was such a hot mess. Oh my
It was a
god, it
hot
was
mess, but
bad.
like even yesterday you were like, "Okay, it's been too long since we talked." And it was like an hour
No,
since
I
we had
know. It was
chatted on
like
the
2
phone.
o'clock. It was like 2 in the afternoon, and I was like, why haven't we spoken like 3 times yet today?" So anyway, here we are.
Seriously. Okay.
And And this episode is gonna be piggybacking off of the spirit guide episode that we just released, that we recorded a while ago. But it's like a good transition as far as, okay, these are the guides, these are the angels, the animals, all those things. And now we're gonna talk about, well, how do you communicate with them? What are the tools that are used? So, what are your tools, Gabs? How do you communicate
Oh.
with your guides and your hot higher
Well,
self?
my hot higher self, she looks like Daenerys apparently.
Oh,
I was platinum
Mother
blonde there for a
Dragon.
second. Yeah, 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 literally, like, that is literally, like, aside from being a mother in this lifetime, is waking people up to this work by literally being myself, and I just said literally 4 times. But at the
You
beginning of
literally
this
did.
I did. At the beginning of this work, and still now to this day, I'm really heavy on, like, the cards, because I, like Nicole at the beginning, really was just doubting it and had a lot of skepticism, and I needed the messages to be repeated, and so that's literally work in threes. So I use the cards, and the way that I use them initially, because I was just in such a season of doubt, I would shuffle the cards and then I would get a message and it was the exact message that I needed, but then I doubted it. And so the same card would come up not once, but 2 more times, right? And so when that starts to happen, you're just like, "Oh shit, there's something behind this." So,
Mhm.
yeah, but primarily I do use cards as my major divination tool, including the tarot and angelic oracle cards. Um, and there's other couple things that I do, like incantations and stuff. But before I go into that, what about you, Nicole?
So yeah, I started with the cards. I had a card deck for a while, an oracle deck, because I'm not really called to tarot. I've never really been drawn to tarot. I've had tarot readings and they've just never been great. So I wasn't feeling the pull to use them. But so I did a little bit of research also on the differences between oracle decks and tarot. So oracle cards for sure. Um, I have one deck in particular that I like. And then I just recently got into pendulums. But that's been a little bit of like a rocky relationship with the pendulums. So we'll talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, you just bought 2 more over the weekend when we went to the store because I had makeup on and I was like, I don't want to go home. So we end up meeting at the witch shop in our local city nearby. Oh, this bitch is pulling them out of her tits right now on video.
I need to
Did you
bind
really
them to my
just do
energy,
that?
right?
So you just put
Well, yeah. Don't you?
I don't put
Don't
anything in
you?
my bra. No.
Oh, I always throw stones down my shirt. There we
Oh,
go.
I'm afraid of losing it.
It's not going anywhere. They're nice and tucked in there.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, so
It's
I
binding to
think
my
we're gonna
energy. They're gonna work this time.
yeah, well, this is her second and her third because the first one started lying to her or just not working, right? But
Just
I
stop
honestly think
working.
that's because you're supposed to be like training your intuition right now, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So
Okay. So you have the decks, and I feel like we end up having certain decks that we like more than others. So
mhm,
what's been your
totally.
experience with that?
So my first deck was a mermaid deck because I am a mermaid and I'm honestly just obsessed with them. And the way that I went in about buying this deck was I went with my girlfriend. She was referenced in episode 1. Her and her mom are yoga instructors, and I'm good friends with them. And we went to the nearby spiritual shop, and like the associate there, he was like, "Hey, like," because I had asked a question, I was like, "Which one should I get?" And he's like, "Well, you immediately went to the mermaid one, so you should go with that." And that's how you're supposed to choose decks. Like, you should go to the store, properly like find it, let it find you. I always discourage it getting on Amazon if you can avoid it. However, that's not to say I haven't done it myself. I got my first tarot deck on Amazon, and it's been straight up like a ride or die. It's not the prettiest. but it's very like tried and true. Um, and I just started off with oracle decks initially. So I had that mermaid deck, and then I was like, you know what? I'm afraid of the tarot, but I almost feel like I need to learn it because one, it's a staple and most practitioners understand it. And so just have an understanding of it. And but that was like my relationship with the tarot I have is just a traditional Rider Waite deck. And it's kind of the harder ones to learn. There's a much easier way to go about it where you can get like a beginner's deck, and the beginner's deck has, and most of them actually all have books that go with it and they explain the meanings of each card.
Mm.
But I made it harder on myself than it needed to be. And then at the beginning of it, when I started studying the tarot, I didn't realize that it lines up one to one with the zodiac in terms of seasons and elements and literal like times of the year. And so I I started training myself with it. So I would ask it a question and I would shuffle through the cards and the cards would pop out. I tried to do like a daily card pool. And this was in the first probably like 6 months to a year before I started incorporating it into my practice. And I would look up the meanings of the cards online and then I would put them together. And then I just started slowly like building up the knowledge of what those cards meant together, reversed from the aspects of health, love, finances, and career. And I just kind of went from there. And aside from that, I do pendulum work, but I only just got into it around the same time as Nichole, but I had a general understanding of how to use the tools. And aside from that, I do a lot of incantation work. So at the beginning of the day and before I go to bed, I clean my energy. I envision myself being cleansed by diamond white light, just like we open up all containers with on this podcast and any type of session I'm going into with the client. And I'll call my energy back immediately at the beginning of the day and the end of the day because I definitely believe in astral travel and deja vu when you're sleeping. So, like the dimensions that you go to, which I'm sure we're going to hit in a dream episode.
Oh,
But
I
when I
can't
wake
wait.
up, oh, I'm kind of scared because I just need to call my energy back because I vividly remember my dreams and have deja vu literally 2 years to the day. So there's just a period in which I'm like, okay, like I need to like call my energy back. I cleanse it though. So like in the morning when I wake up, one of the first things that I do is I envision almost like a clean barrier, like a barrier wall that's translucent and my energy has to go through it so it can be cleansed. And it's the energy that's obviously gone to different dimensions while I've been sleeping. And that's like one of the
Hmm.
first things I do along with protecting myself and my energy.
Hmm.
Isn't that wild?
Seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but it becomes a habit
Hmm.
after 3 months.
Oh, it's a long time.
We're
I
already in
did.
May. Look at how quickly this year's gone by.
No, I know. I know.
What about you?
Yes, I have my synchronicity deck that I love, and that's kind of my
Mhm.
go-to. And I started by, I think when I started meditating, when you told me to meditate, because I was asking you, like, what do I do? How do I do this? How do I tap in? It was, well, you need to meditate. And then I had the card deck, and I said, well, let me start using the card deck. And I that deck was really, it still does. That deck really hits, not just for me, but it hits for anybody that I'm, doing a reading for. Is your assistant working right now? Because we keep getting we
Is
keep
she
getting notifications that clips are being pulled. Is she working?
Oh, no, 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 no. I did that earlier. I didn't realize it
Oh,
went
okay.
through. I
They're
was,
just all coming through right now. I was like, wow,
oh,
look at
finally.
her.
No, she hasn't worked
Um,
today. I should get on her, huh?
hmm, I thought it was her. Anyway, sorry, squirrel. So yeah, I really like that deck, and then was so I got almost addicted to just the information it was giving me and just how accurate it was. And so then I bought, I don't know, like 4 more decks in a matter of a week or two, and I've been wanting
Yeah.
yeah.
For real. True story.
I was on vacation and I ordered a bunch online and I timed them so that way they would come the day that I got home,
Does
which
your
so
husband
happened to
know
be Uh,
How much money you spent on decks in a period of a week?
it wasn't a lot, like
Oh, okay,
60
okay.
bucks maybe, not a lot.
Okay, okay.
And it just so happened that I was coming home on a full moon or
Mm.
the day after a full moon. So I was like, perfect. I'll throw them under the windowsill and let the moon do whatever it's supposed to do. Yeah, so I bought a few decks and I've been having the itch to buy another. And we went to the witchy store the other day and I didn't really see any I liked. So I was looking online and actually did find one that I think I'm going to get, but it doesn't come out until June 20th. But I think that'll be the one um, that I end up
I
getting.
love I love that that's time with summer solstice and our birthday.
I wonder if whoever or the person that made the deck, I wonder if she planned it that way.
Planned it that way, yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. We'll have to see.
Okay, so
So,
you talked
how do you use
about
them?
how do I use them? I I've kind of changed the way I use them. And initially I would pull well, I still kind of do that. When I do my daily pulls, I pull for me and I'll use 4 decks. I have 4 decks that I use on a daily basis for like daily pulls. And then I'll kind of meditate on it after. And when I'm doing like a reading, I don't know, they're not readings. I like really struggle with that word. When I do a meditation for somebody, I pull the cards after because I want to see if anything that I got is confirmed in the cards. So that's the way I use them now. Um yeah, and then let's see. Lately, well not lately, but as I started practicing on people, I was noticing and I'm still noticing it that there's like themes that come up. So whenever somebody is asking a question about relationships, typically there's one card that'll pop up and it's almost with everybody. When somebody asks about their child, another card will pop up. 1 or 2 cards, either the mother card or the child card. I did one today for somebody and they were asking a question about their child and the mother card and the child came up together when I followed up on it. So yeah, I've noticed things like that. And then sometimes it's very apparent that it's connected. So for example, one time I did meditation for somebody and they were asking about, I think, relationships. I don't remember. And I had gotten something very specific about a teacher. Like I was feeling something about a teacher and school. And the first card that I pulled was the teacher card. So I was like, okay, perfect. Another time I pulled a card and I had told somebody that I kind of saw them traveling and I had come up with a month. I said, I see like something happening in September. I see you maybe like traveling somewhere. And they told me they were going to Africa in September. Well, when I looked at the cards that I had pulled, one of the cards that I pulled literally had Africa on the card. So that's my favorite deck. It always hits. It's always so accurate and yeah, it's good. It's I love it. Like, I'm always so excited to see what's gonna come up after I do it.
Yeah, and there's like a ton of cards that you have yet to pull in that deck too, just because it's like a close to
There's
80 deck. It's like 80 cards, sorry.
Yeah, there's so many cards that I haven't even pulled, and so in the beginning, I think excuse me, for me, I was getting the same card over and over, and one day, like, I was just sitting there and the card fell. And that was, I think, for me, the sign of, like, we're talking to you, right? Like, my guides, whomever, like someone's talking
Mhm.
to me. So that was what really drew me in. And I know I should be using them. Again, we kind of spoke about it in the last episode where I just don't feel like I have that strong connection with my guides. But I know I have a strong connection to something. I just don't know if it's my guides. Like I don't know what it is, but I have a connection somewhere and and it usually comes through by way of that specific card deck.
Mhm. So, I have a quick question, just going back
Yeah.
to the one that you read for and that's going to Africa. Did you see anything about love going on that in that area or that time on that trip? Or was that later on? It was later on, right?
Oh, I don't remember. I would need to go back through my notes. But yeah, that was one of the questions that they asked about. I need to
Yeah.
go
I
back.
was
I'll look when we're done and I'll see what came up. But yeah, they asked about
that, right?
that.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. So, and your pendulum, how's that? I know you just said that you haven't had the best of luck and they're currently being trained next to your nipples at this point in time.
They're deep in a crevice in my bra. They're not really near my nipples.
Okay.
Mm, the pendulum. So I actually used it today. I used one of the ones that I got today. And it seemed to move pretty quickly because I cleansed it. I slept with it under my pillow. And then I think I meditated with it. And then now it's just been in my shirt all day. But it did move pretty well for me. I'm really curious. For me, the pendulum was more about trying to see if I could align my chakras or do some kind of chakra work. That was initially why I was drawn to the pendulum. And I think the other stuff was just a bonus, but I would eventually like to incorporate it a little bit more. And then I have some of the charts that I don't really know how to use the charts. So, yeah, the pendulums just like I have them, but jury's still out. So I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But what about your pendulum? How's that been for you?
Her name is Amy. She
Amy,
is
yep.
a she
We
is
came
of
up with the same
amethyst.
name.
I know she's like, "What are you gonna name it?" I was like, "Amy," or something like that. Yours like,
I
"You
was
should
like,
name
oh,
it
you should
Amy."
name it Amy.
And then I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly her name."
Hmm.
She's been pretty tried and true. She hasn't given me issues, but she was actually my first bought one, and I actually made one before that. And the first one I didn't name, but she's my travel pendulum. I should give her a name. And she's a carnelian ring, held onto by like just a string that you can use
Hmm.
for cooking around Thanksgiving with the turkey. So I forget what it's called, but yeah, I don't like to. I'm kind of weird when I travel with like my stuff just because I don't want anything to get damaged. But Amy's been pretty good to me.
She's a
She
ride
hasn't
or
let me
die.
down. She's the ride or die.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm hoping mine get that way because I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't had much luck. But okay. So we have card decks, right? Oracle cards or tarot cards,
Incantations.
incantations, pendulum. What about a Ouija board?
No. That scares me
Why?
because of its stereotype and how it's used. And I don't know. I don't think I'm down to mess with it, to be honest. And I'm pretty sure you can buy one at Target, and that's also equally terrifying because it's in the like children's toy section. Like, WTF, guys.
Yeah. So I've never played with the Ouija board. I wanted to back when I was probably like teens. But I didn't. And I actually don't think I've ever even seen one in person. Like like I've seen the box, right? Like in the toy aisle, but I don't think I've ever seen one unboxed. I've definitely never touched one. So I thought it would be kind of fun to give you a little bit of history on the Ouija board. What do you think? Your face.
Yeah, these videos, once they get up on YouTube, they're gonna say so much. Okay. Yeah, I'm down. All right. Tell me, educate me, sister.
Do you have any questions about the Ouija board first?
Would you play with one?
Would I what?
Would you play with one?
No, no.
No. Okay, okay. That's it. That's the
No.
only question I have.
No, I do not fuck with a Ouija board.
I don't fuck with you.
Nope. Mm-mm. You little stupid ass bitch, I ain't fucking with you. Stay away from me. Okay. So, a Ouija board, initially it was known as a spirit board or a talking board. And I would say most people probably know what they look like. So, it's like a board, and then there's the alphabet, there's numbers, there's the words yes, there's the words no, and then there's the words goodbye. So, it's on the board. And then there's the planchette, which is um the cursor, I guess, right? That everybody puts their hands on when they're using a Ouija board. And the idea was that two or more people would sit around the board. They would place their fingertips lightly on the planchette. They would ask a question, and then they would watch as the planchette moved from like letter to letter or yeses or nos, and like kind of giving them answers. So initially it was they were made of wood, and now they're like cardboard, right? Quality always I feel like goes down in everything as we progress in time, right? Think about the quality of vehicles and how before they were like made out of metal and like they were indestructible, and now everything's like fiberglass and will, accordion up in a fender bender. And the planchette's like plastic, so right, kind of like cheapy material. And so the Ouija board came out of the 19th century American obsession with spiritualism. So, Gabs, what's spiritualism?
I actually am unsure of what spiritualism is. However, my mediumship teacher did train as a spiritualist. So I'm not too well informed. So I
Okay.
can't speak to that.
So, yeah, it's the belief that the dead are able to communicate with the living. So it makes sense that the
That makes
mediumship,
sense.
yeah, would train in that. So the Ouija board, not Ouija board, but as it was previously known, a talking board or spirit board, it had been around for a while already in Europe. And it came to America in 1848 because there were these sisters. They were called the Fox Sisters. They were from New York. And they had claimed that they were getting messages from spirits who would like knock on walls to answer questions. And they would kind of like put on shows and like recreating the process of that. So like asking the questions and getting the knocks. Well, they were frauds. So we'll probably do a story about them in the future. But that was kind of how it came to America, was by these sisters and just, their trickery that they were doing. So there's somebody who actually studies Ouija boards, and his name is Robert Murch, and he's been researching them since like 1992. And he had said that before he did that, like there wasn't a lot of information. Nobody really knew much about the Ouija board, which was really interesting. And I was listening to an episode of, it might have been the Girls Next Door podcast, or it was the Ghost Magnet podcast that Bridget does. And they were talking about just all the different Ouija boards. And I think she was saying that there was like a pink Ouija board, like, because this guy collects Ouija boards. And I think she said she did too. But anyways, they didn't know a lot about it initially in 92. And how many years ago was that? 30?
30.
Oh, okay.
Almost 31.
Oh, okay. So initially, when the Ouija board came out, it was like an acceptable activity. It was kind of seen as like a wholesome activity to try to contact spirits at like seances or through automatic writing or. Mhm.
I just wanted to say seances, cannot wait to cover how those went down during Lincoln's era in the White House.
Oh, how funny you mentioned Lincoln. Okay.
Okay.
So okay, so what's a seance? What's
It is
automatic writing? What's table turning?
okay. Table turning, I have an idea, but I'm not going to speak to that because it sounds scary. Automatic writing is almost like when you let your higher self, is how I understand it. You ask yourself a question and you just write down what naturally comes out. And typically, the information that's coming out is like a smarter version of you, or smarter information that you maybe would have put down initially. And then a seance is when you get with a group of people in a circle and you invite, quote unquote, negative energy or
Nope.
energy that is not of this dimension, aka spirits, into that circle.
Would you do a seance?
No.
Okay, thank God. Because when you said seance, like my whole body felt scared.
I mean, like, okay, we're
No.
mediums. Okay, well, no, I'm just saying,
Oh,
we're mediums. You're a medium, I'm a medium, but there are limits to our madness in the sense of what type of energy is welcome and we are going to read. And the container of a seance, fuck no.
I still don't know if I feel like a medium, but okay. Okay, moving on. So table turning is it almost kind of reminded me of like using a Ouija board. So the people would put their hands on the table and watch it start to like shake and rattle. And everybody would kind of say, well, I'm not doing it. I'm not touching it. Kind of like same thing with the Ouija board, right? Everybody says, well, I'm not moving it. You're moving it. No, I'm not doing that. Right. So kind of the same idea.
Like a
Um,
pendulum.
kind of. Yeah. So speaking of pendulums,
I
no,
mean,
we'll
is
save
it
it.
your okay, okay.
We'll save that. We'll save that question. We'll save it. Okay. So Lincoln's wife, so First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln, she would have seances in the White House because their son died from a fever in 1862 and he was only 11 years old. So,
Aw.
yeah, so she was having seances back in the White House way back when. So, anyway, so spiritualism came to America and what happened? Well, the fucking impatient Americans were like, this is taking too long to like get any messages from the spirits, right? Because we're so impatient, we want like everything now. So they were like, okay, well, how can we get information from the spirits quicker and in a faster way versus, waiting for the knocks or whatever, like cuz that takes so long, right? And there was a company that kind of figured out a way to capitalize on it, and they were the Kennard Novelty Company. So in 1886, there was a news article about the new phenomenon that was taking over spiritualist camps in Ohio, which was the talking board, right? So before it became the Ouija board, it was still the talking board. And so the article was kind of widespread. And so there was a man named Charles Kennard, and he was from Baltimore. He jumped on it. So in 1890, he got together four other investors to start this Kennard Novelty Company so they could exclusively make the new talking boards, like make and market them. And one of the guys that he pulled in, his name was Elijah Bond, and he was an attorney. And none of these guys were spiritualists, like that wasn't really their thing. But right, they were all very like savvy businessmen and they had identified a niche that they could really like capitalize on. So Elijah Bond, the attorney, he had a sister-in-law and her name was Helen Peters. And according to Elijah Bond, the sister-in-law was like a very strong medium. And she's according to what I read, she's behind the name of the Ouija board. That's how it got its name, was allegedly from her. So the story was that they were sitting around the table and they asked the board what they should call it, and the name Ouija came through. Or Ouija, I think it's Ouija, came
Ouija,
through. Ouija,
interesting.
because it's Ouija. Ouija?
With
I don't know.
J A or I?
A.
A?
Ouija.
Oh, okay, okay. What's the
Yeah.
plural? Because we're so crazy about our grammar. Do you know what the plural of that would be?
No, I don't know.
Okay, now we need to Google it. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Um, maybe Ouijas apostrophe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't fucking know. So when they asked what that word meant, the board apparently just said goodbye and like they never got an answer. So the guy Robert Murch that I mentioned, the one that studies the Ouija boards, he had done a bunch of like interviews with like family member descendants of the Ouija board founders. And he had heard a story about how they got the patent for the Ouija board. So apparently they needed to get a patent, right? So they could make more money. And they needed to figure out like how can we prove that this board works so that we can get this patent. So Elijah Bond took his sister-in-law Helen Peters and they went to the patent office together to file the application. And the patent officer wanted a demonstration. He's like, tell me how this works. Like, you guys got to prove it to me before I give you this patent. And so if the board could spell his name accurately, and apparently Elijah Bond and Helen Peters didn't know his name, he said, "Okay, I'll let the application go through." So they sat down, and apparently the planchette like spelled out the name of the patent officer's name. And so there's some question as to, was that spirits? Did Elijah Bond really maybe know the patent officer's name because he was a patent attorney? So they don't really know for sure what it was. But the patent officer was like, you know, freaked out, and he gave him the patent. And so the patent didn't have any like explanation as to like how it worked, right? It was just like a lot of like mystery and ambiguity as far as what the board was and how it worked, which is like marketing gold, right? Like, especially for something like this, because people are going to be naturally drawn to that. Um, and so the less that they talked about it, or that the less that they could explain how it worked, the board was just like more mysterious, and like more people wanted it. So what happens, right? Supply and demand. Like, they were making money, and they didn't care like what people thought as far as like why it worked, right? It was just like, well, people can think whatever they want. We're making like a lot of money. And in 1892, they had one factory in Baltimore. They increased to two factories in Baltimore, two in New York, two in Chicago, and one in London. And so by 1893, so a year later, they were they there was some like tension, right, within the group of investors. And so there was another man that came in, and his name was William Fold, and he had kind of like helped build up the company, and he was running the company. So he never claimed to be the one that invented the board, but his obituary when he died in 1927, New York Times like called him the inventor of the Ouija board, even though he wasn't. And he died after like a freak accident. He fell from the roof of his new factory. And what?
That's interesting.
And the factory, according to him, um, was built because the Ouija board told him to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is enough for me to just know. Not that I didn't know before, and that was already confirmation, but I will never fuck with the Ouija board. So continue.
Okay. So now it's like what? How many years later? Like 120, 130 years later? Like, it still is,
It's still a thing.
it's still a thing. And it was, marketed as like a mystical oracle, or it was like marketed as family entertainment, right? We talked about how it's in like like the toy aisles, right? Like the game aisles at different
For
stores.
children, like what, 8 to 12 or 8 to 16? Isn't that what it's marketed towards? Like the age groups in the corner of the
I don't
packaging of
even
the box?
I
We'll have
don't
to check
even
next time we
know.
go to Target.
Yeah. So anyway, so a lot of people were buying the Ouija board, not just people that were like into the spiritualist movement, but a lot of people were into it. And what do you think the mediums thought?
They probably hated it because they were getting run out of business.
Yeah, because they were like, well, if people don't need us anymore, people are just gonna buy this board, like we're gonna be out of business, we're gonna be out of a job. And so, it appealed to like a lot of people, right? Different ages, different professions, different people, like levels of education, right? Like it wasn't like only the goth kids liked, the Ouija boards. It was kind of like a little bit of everybody. And because why? Because people want to believe. And we've talked about this before. Like, people need to have something to believe in. They need a that's like really important for people, right? Is to have something that they can put their faith into and put their belief in. And so during the Great Depression, the company opened new factories because there was such a high demand for the boards. And let's see, so over a 5-month period in 1944, there was a department store that sold 50,000 of the Ouija boards, so 10,000 a month. And then in 1967, Parker Brothers bought the game from the company and they sold 2 million boards, which outsold Monopoly. I mean, Monopoly is probably one of the highest selling games. I mean,
Ever.
yeah, and think about just all the different versions of Monopoly there are, right? We saw like a Super Mario Brothers Monopoly. People I've seen even locally, I think they had like a Oxnard Monopoly or something, right? There's just so many different versions of Monopoly. It's such a huge game.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So, excuse me. Excuse me. So there was like would-be crime solvers that were trying to use the Ouija board for clues to different like murders. And let's see, in 1921, the New York Times had reported that there was a Chicago woman that was being sent to the psychiatric hospital. And she was trying to explain to the doctors that she wasn't suffering from mania, but that the Ouija board spirits had told her to leave her mother's dead body in the living room for 15 days before she buried it in the backyard.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. In 1930,
Okay.
your face. In 1930, newspaper readers read about two women in Buffalo, New York, who had murdered another woman, supposedly on the encouragement of Ouija board messages. In 1941, a 23-year-old gas station attendant from New Jersey told the New York Times that he joined the army because the Ouija board told him to. That's not bad. You know, he's not killing anybody, he's just enlisting.
Yeah.
Uh, and then in 1958, a Connecticut court decided not to honor the Ouija board will of Miss Helen Dowpeck, who left only $1,000 to two former servants and an insane amount of $152,000 to Mr. John Gale Forbes, a lucky but bodiless spirit who'd contacted her via the Ouija board. She left all her money to a spirit that wasn't a real person that
Wasn't a
could
real person.
get the money. Yeah. So the Ouija board was like, you know, just mysterious. It wasn't like threatening, right? It was just kind of like a fun, hokey thing. Not hokey, but just a fun thing that people did until the movie The Exorcist came out.
Did you watch that
And
movie?
yeah, I probably couldn't watch it again, but yeah, I've watched it before. I try not to go
The
into
OG one?
those. Yeah, the OG one. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
I
I
try
don't
not
think I
to.
could do that now.
You know, I think I want to do a story about it, about like all the different events that went on during like the filming of that movie or like the movie The Omen. 'Cause there's a lot of crazy shit that happens on
You know
those.
what? I'm just gonna manifest. We've manifested a couple people that we want on and like just podcasts that we want to work with or do a collab with. But like I think for that episode, how cool would that be to record at the nearby local haunted hotel that we've talked about? Just to do like a whole
Yeah.
like scary story string and like record there and feature it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's work on that. Let's
Yeah.
put the assistant to work on that.
She loves
um
it.
so yeah, so The Exorcist kind of really changed things for people because the idea of the movie was that the little girl was possessed after she had played with the Ouija board. So then after that, it was like not seen as this, you know, fun game. It was like a tool of the devil and, you know, a tool of like horror movies. And so it was used a lot in scary movies and usually being used in the sense of like opening the doors to like negative energy and things like that. And then like different religious groups started jumping on that and saying it was like the work of Satan and all those things happen. And so in 2001, right? So this is like a progression, but like in 2001, they were like burning them um along with like copies of like Harry Potter and like Snow
Oh,
White.
I love Harry Potter.
Yeah. I still haven't read it.
I know we just talked about that in another episode, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a fan of the author anymore, but the books are great.
So then even within like the paranormal community, like Ouija boards started kind of like not having the greatest reputation. And then so Robert Murch, the guy that's the researcher, had said he was doing like conventions and they were telling him to like leave the boards at home because it was like scaring people. And you know, they still sell, right? They're still it's still a thing, but how do so switching gears, like how do they work? And so you were asking earlier, like you were saying something about like the pendulum, right?
Mhm.
So how does a pendulum work? Explain to us.
Well, in my experience, the pendulum works by way of you holding it out in front of you. It's already aligned to your energy and it's connected to your energy. So if you ask it a question, it's technically answering through your spirit or your energy or your higher being, higher self, however you want to phrase it. I don't know about the Ouija board. You tell me.
So it's kind of the same thing. The idea, my understanding with pendulum is that yeah, it's like your higher self that's giving the answer, and your body makes like involuntary like muscle movements,
Okay. Muscle
and that's how
testing
you're getting
ish.
the answer, right? Like your higher
Mm-hmm.
self is like involuntarily moving the pendulum. So kind of same thing with the planchette on the Ouija board. It's like the involuntary muscle movements that happen in the body, that right, because I mean you just can't be completely still, right? If you put your hands out, you still move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the idea behind it. It's called the what is it, idiometer?
Okay.
Ideometer, I think.
Okay.
Idiotometer. Until I can't word great well.
Well,
Yeah, well, I don't word good, okay?
okay.
But yeah, the idea is it just kind of happens without you really thinking about it. So like the idea of like think about when you're watching a sad movie and you just start crying
Mm-hmm.
without thinking about it, right? It's kind of the same thing.
Cancer, crab life.
Yeah,
That's just us to the T.
I know we cry for everything. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the quick and dirty on the Ouija board. And I won't read them just because we're running out of time, but I found two stories and we'll probably link them in the show notes. And they're not very long, but there was a story about um, an outbreak of like illness that happened in an all girls Catholic school, Catholic boarding school in Mexico City. And that happened in March of 2007. So somewhat recent, right? It wasn't that long ago. What was it, 15 years? 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it talks about what was going on with that. And apparently somebody had used a Ouija board and shit started going wild at the school. So we'll link that story in there. And then a more recent one in November 2022, same thing happened. There was 28 girls that were rushed to the hospital in Colombia after playing with a Ouija board. And I couldn't find a lot of information about that one, but that was, I mean, that's really
That's
recent.
recent. Yeah.
That's not even a year ago. But you know, fucking girls, right? We can't like
We're
we can't
curious.
help ourselves. We can't help ourselves. It's happened at like all girls school. Both of these stories were all girls
Yeah.
schools. So if anybody has story about a Ouija board, like if any of our listeners have ever played with one, I would love to hear some stories about like real people that we know or real people that want to share that with us. Because I have no stories because I don't fuck with it.
Yeah. We don't fuck with that. And our DMs are dry, guys. So send us a DM.
Oh, yeah.
But so, okay. What would you say your takeaways are? Because that was a very in depth story. And I absolutely know for certain I would not fuck with the Ouija board. And I feel like I would really want, so, and I'm not judging the people that are, but I would like to know what their motivation behind working with the Ouija board would be, since the connotation seems to be negative.
My takeaway is um still not gonna fuck with one ever.
Mm-hmm.
My thought on why people might be drawn to it is that I think there's some people that maybe don't believe, right? And or right, a skeptic believer, right? I still feel very much like a skeptic believer. But I'm more of a believer than a skeptic, so the part of me that believes would stay away from it, but if I was more of a skeptic, I would probably wanna do it to, like, to prove myself right, "Right, this isn't a real thing. Like, this is dumb, this is all made up, people who think this is real, like, they're dumb," right? I'm guessing, or maybe they don't maybe they're not that harsh in their thinking, but just that idea of, like, this isn't a real thing, and I'm gonna, like, prove it's not a real thing. So,
Mhm.
maybe that would be somebody's, motivation, and then for other people, though, I think people are just curious, right? We just said it, people are just curious, and they wanna know,
Yeah.
and I think maybe it has mm, it's maybe not as threatening because it's sold in, like, a toy aisle, right?
Mm.
So I wonder if some people have that thought behind it, but I've heard some crazy stories about, like, people that play with Ouija boards and then they try to burn it, and then the next day it's, like, on their front porch or it won't
Shut
burn.
up.
No, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
or,
no.
like, it
No, no,
doesn't
no.
burn, right? Things like
No,
that,
no,
and
no.
so yeah, I don't know. I think it's people that are just like, "Ah, this is just, like, dumb. This is just a game. It's like we're playing Monopoly," because you can get it, right? Probably right next to Monopoly,
Literally.
and they don't think about it or don't think they're opening themselves up to anything. So the takeaway is, if you're gonna practice anything, even when I use cards, when I use my pendulum, like, I put, like, protections in place.
Yeah. Protocols.
Protocols, right? Like, I call in archangels, I do all those things because you don't know. You don't know. I heard a story recently, I was telling you, I think yesterday, I heard a story recently about somebody who got a negative energy, or sorry, negative entity attached to them by you trying to make a crystal grid. And I mean, you're
That's
not you're not thinking that you're calling in anything negative by using a crystal grid. You think you're doing the opposite. You think you're protecting yourself.
literally. It's so
Yeah.
interesting that story. Well, and I'll make it quick because we're gonna wrap it up and we'll give you the how to's as to how to apply with the cards and all the things that we talked about at the beginning. But that experience that you shared with your associate or colleague or friend, however you want to, label her as, um, the fact that, she was just doing it and an entity came in as she was just simply putting together a crystal grid. The way that I've known entities to come in has been through like abuse, sexual abuse. They were on drugs, like shit like that, like, and not something like a crystal grid. So I really have to sit with that because I've never heard of it until you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, guys, if you're gonna do anything, just make sure you're always, protecting yourself. Safe
Mm.
practice, safe sex, safe spirituality, safe everything.
Safe everything. And then quick how to applies. I would say if you're interested in working with cards, do a daily card pool, meditate, have some kind of a ritual in your life that encourages you to develop your intuition. Frequency, consistency, and commitment are the ways to go about it. And just over the course of time, you will see a difference. And it's like anything, it's like going to the gym, it's like lifting weights. You increase over time and you build up the momentum and the endurance and the stability and so forth. And that is my takeaway.
And don't fuck with the Ouija board.
Practice safe sex.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, if you guys have any of your own Ouija board stories, we would love to hear it. I would be really curious to see what people's experiences have been. So you can send us an email through our email. Send us an
Mm-hmm.
email through our email.
At, well, the Spiritual Sisters Podcast at gmail.com.
You can send us a story through our Instagram DM.
At the Spiritual Sisters Podcast.
You can contact Gabrielle via Instagram. There's so many to remember.
I know. At Agua Astrology.
You can follow me on Instagram.
At Mom Wifey Therapist, but don't DM her because she's married.
I'm married, people. What's the other one? Oh, if you want to book a reading with Gabrielle.
www.aguaastrology.com. And we should probably start pimping out the blog too.
When you're ready.
Okay.
Also, wherever you're listening, rate and review. That would be really helpful so more people can find us. Please and thank
Yes,
you.
please. Please and thank you. It's free.
And we'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.